Welcome to the Strategic Marketer Podcast, where we talk about strategies, tactics, and practical steps to help you become a more strategic marketer. I'm your host, Joseph Lewin, and today I'm speaking with Emily Brady, a social media specialist from Sweetfish Media. In our conversation today, we're talking about the playbook for launching a LinkedIn evangelist program. Emily has helped to launch the evangelist program at Sweetfish Media, and they are killing it. I see their content come up in my feed all the time, and I've connected with and built relationships with multiple people on their team because of their program. We're going to dive through the ins and outs of how to create an evangelist program, the value that they're seeing come out of it, and some practical steps for you to be able to grow your reach on LinkedIn. So let's dive right into the conversation. What is a LinkedIn evangelist program?
So our evangelist program is our collective thought leadership program, and we currently have 12 employees who are participating. And for us, it's just we want to flood everyone's feed with as much content as we can, as much helpful content, not just content for quantity's sake, but to position ourselves as thought leaders in our industry, to grow our brand awareness, and hopefully leads to revenue. So to sum it up, it's a thought leadership program. A lot of companies will call it like an ambassador program. We just decided to go with evangelist program because it seemed fitting for what we're doing.
Yeah, and I haven't seen a lot of companies. I've definitely seen a few, but I haven't seen a lot of companies that are taking that approach where they're empowering their employees to be building their personal brand on LinkedIn and really driving that as a strategy. So what was the driving force behind launching a LinkedIn evangelist program at Sweetfish?
Yeah. So I think it was just the fact that, well, first of all, LinkedIn is where our decision makers are really for our business. So it just made sense to focus on that platform instead of something like TikTok or Instagram. And so we had actually James Carberry, our CEO, and then Dan Sanchez, who is our director of marketing. They started being really, really active on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and seeing just that they were able to have so many good conversations there, that it is a social network. A lot of people think of it as just a place to hold your resume, but it really is a social network. And so they started posting consistently and seeing results from that as far as like reach and engagement. And then James he saw that and he decided, let's open this up to the company. Let's see how far we can go with more people.
Yeah, I love that approach. And, when you see something working, then diving in with both feet. And I've definitely been on LinkedIn for a while and seen something similar, just more of the social aspect. And you can definitely tell when companies and individuals are using Buffer or a program like that to be automatically posting across all of their social media. It really sticks out like a sore thumb when you're active on LinkedIn and you're building community and you're connecting with people. You can definitely tell a big difference between the companies that are taking a holistic approach and really diving into the strategy of LinkedIn, not just creating content in general, but what does it look like to create content on LinkedIn? I think an important question for people that are looking to implement something like what you're doing is, are we going to see results from that? So could you speak a little bit to some of the results you guys have seen so far and how long and the time period that it took to see those results?
Yeah, so I was hired on in May to start in Q3, Q4, building up as long as we can keep this going. But when I started, we didn't have anyone in charge of social media, and I was hired to head up this program and to motivate people and train people to be active on the platform because a lot of people just don't know how to use it or aren't confident with using it. So my role is to empower those people and to equip them. I also create a lot of content for the individuals in our company as well. But we were able to see, since we started, we had 14 people on board in that first quarter.
Oh, wow.
And we saw over 160,000 in ARR, which actually is the same number that we saw for this last quarter as well. So it's brought in revenue for us, which is obviously a big benefit.
That's
we
awesome.
We also get we get questions about it all the time. So it's been really cool to see the conversations that we're able to have, as well as the connections we're able to have just because of the program. So it's hard to measure like how many DMs you get or the quality of those DMs. But I know I personally have seen that in a lot of people. We have a Slack channel where we share our wins and we share cool stuff like that. So that's been cool to see. We've established our credibility more, I think, as thought leaders, just because we're putting out helpful content and well researched, well thought out, that kind of thing. And then we also are helping our employees build their personal brands. And we think, how cool would it be to be the place where a brand started, like to
Hmm.
springboard our employees, because they're not going to stay with us forever. We know that. And so it's just kind of a neat bonus to be able to help them build their brands for wherever they go.
Yeah, I love that mentality, and I've met James, and so I can see where that comes from. Coming from the
Yeah.
top, it's amazing when CEOs and leaders take that approach. Where they're really empowering their employees, and I think it builds loyalty, but it also helps makes it so that people want to come work somewhere like that because they know that there's extra value in being somewhere where you're going to be able to grow and then move on without it being something where everybody hates you when you leave because you left. It's more empowering. So that's really a neat benefit. And also, I mean, just from my personal standpoint, I've seen I've seen content in my feed from Sweetfish employees. I mean, I see it every day. I see
Yeah.
posts from multiple Sweetfish employees every single day on LinkedIn. And so from just a brand recognition standpoint and building that trust and all of that, some of those things that aren't necessarily attributable to next month's quarter or
Yeah.
sorry, next month's quota or, this quarter's revenue or next quarter's revenue. It's more of those establishing a legacy brand that's going to last. Um, One example of that is I found that I open and read emails from brands that I recognize far more than brands that I don't. And
Mhm.
so there's just an automatic built-in trust when I get cold outreach from a brand that I recognize. And
Yes.
so if there's a brand that I've seen on LinkedIn and I've seen somebody I've engaged with on LinkedIn and they reach out to me personally, or even somebody from their company reaches out to me, I'm far more likely to answer and respond and open up a sales conversation from there versus a
Yeah.
company that has never built that reputation and rapport. So some of the things you were alluding to, you have the clear revenue that you can point to, but there's other underlying benefit and to running a program like that you guys haven't even started to see yet because you've already started to see, but you haven't seen the really long term value of that yet because
Mhm.
you've really only started it recently. So it's exciting to see where that's going to lead.
Yeah, I think so. I am excited to hear you say that you're seeing us in your feed and that you've been able to benefit from it as well. And you're absolutely right about like nobody likes cold outreaches, right? No one wants a DM that's just like, "Hey, want to buy this?" Like we want to build trust first, right? So I think that's awesome that you've seen that and I've seen that, and that's what we're working towards. So
Yeah, I mean, and I was introduced to you through LinkedIn and the LinkedIn Evangelist
Mhm.
program, and that's because I originally saw one of James's posts, and got invited to one of your marketing groups.
Mhm.
So it's like a group of 4 or 5 marketers. I think coming up, it's going to be more like 8 to 10 marketers that are meeting for 6 months, and it was an awesome group. And I was able to meet with James in the middle of that because of that group, because I was in Florida, and he invited me to breakfast, and so I've seen, again, just the value and been introduced to your brand through the LinkedIn
Yeah.
Evangelist program, and that's how we're having this conversation. So clearly,
Yeah, that's
uh,
so cool.
yeah, clearly it's already starting to work. So something you alluded to, maybe you could explain. I know you kind of touched on your role a little bit, but maybe you could explain a little bit more of what you do and what that looks like.
Yeah. So I'm responsible for building the program because when I started, we didn't have any sort of system for it. Like I said, we had a lot of our executives were posting on LinkedIn consistently, engaging on LinkedIn consistently, but had no framework for inviting other employees into that. So my a big part of my job is just systematizing a lot of that and how can we get more people to post? How can we get people to engage? But my day to day, I spend a lot of time creating training resources, maybe videos or documents or maybe sending messages in Slack just to train them on how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, or here's a trick for engaging more on LinkedIn, or here's how to write content faster, or where to get your research. So a lot of it is content as
Mm.
well. But then I talk with the evangelists frequently, just because I'm writing for them. Like I said before, I write 3 posts a week for each evangelist, and right now we've got 12, so that's quite a bit. So that's 12 different people that I have to emulate, right? Like I have to get to know their voice and then put that out into the world,
Yeah,
which is really fun. It's actually one of my favorite parts of my
it's a big
job,
job.
but it is, yeah. So initially, when someone wants to join the program, and we do it by quarter, so they commit to each quarter, they will get on a call with me, an onboarding call, and then we'll go over their personal brand document, which is something I make for them. And it's just an outline of their values, their stories, their content themes. And that way I get to know their voice a little bit more, but also they get to flesh out their brand more.
Mm.
So it's a win-win, right? Um, and so I think that's something that's pretty unique and that not a lot of companies actually have capacity for. And we wouldn't have capacity for if I wasn't hired on to do it in a full-time capacity. So, but yeah, that's after we onboard them. I kind of hold their hand a little bit and then see where they go, get to set them free. And that momentum keeps going. Like they build confidence, they build capacity for more posting, for more engaging. And then we hopefully onboard some new ones in the next quarter, and the process keeps going.
This week's episode of The Strategic Marketer is brought to you by the Brand Compass course. If you're looking to take your marketing services side hustle to the next level, the Brand Compass course is for you. In the course, you're going to learn how to identify your ideal customers and narrow down to serve a niche market. Then you're going to learn how to productize your offering so that it's easier for customers to understand exactly what you do for them. And then you're going to put all of this information into a one-page messaging guide. That way you can use your customer's language to speak exactly to their pain points and problems every single time. Check out the show notes for a link to the course. Yeah, so one question before, because I want to ask you some specific details about that, because I think this episode lends itself especially well to making it really practical for people who want to implement something like this at their company and want to start driving towards that.
Yeah.
But one question that came to mind as we were talking through this is you're the social media specialist, and we're only talking about LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
do you guys at Sweetfish focus on other social media platforms as well? And if so,
Yeah.
how does that compare to the amount of attention that you're giving to LinkedIn?
Yeah. I love that you're asking this question because our primary focus is LinkedIn, just because that's where we've seen our results so far. That's where most of our decision makers are because, like I said, TikTok's pretty young, Instagram's pretty young, Twitter is pretty niche. So we kind of explore those a little bit and haven't put our full focus on that yet. But that is also part of my job, is figuring out which social media platform is worth being on. And so right now we're looking at TikTok a little bit because I'm seeing a lot more B2B marketers jumping over to that platform and still spending time on LinkedIn, but migrating there as well, which I think is a smart move because video is becoming more and more popular. And I think that we might see more video on LinkedIn as well. So it's a good skill to have. But I would say execution wise, we're really just executing on LinkedIn right now.
Okay.
And then hopefully we'll get into TikTok. I'd like to get into Twitter as well, but I haven't quite figured out how to grow there. So right now I'm just kind of dabbling there. And another problem with those platforms is that it's a little bit harder to empower and equip our employees to be on those platforms because video takes a lot more time. And it's also a lot more uncomfortable for some people.
Yeah.
And it's also something that I can't ghostwrite for them. Like they're in front of the camera, right?
Can't really
So
ghostwrite a video. Yeah, that's a little more
yeah,
challenging.
yeah, exactly. So those are some problems that we're brainstorming through right now.
Yeah, I mean, but even being able to help them create some kind of basic script or, work through the outline of a video, it makes it a lot easier to make a video if you know
Hmm.
where you're going. You have a beginning, middle, and end. It certainly makes it easier. So I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll be able to help jumpstart that once you figure that out a little bit
Yeah, we're
more.
working on it. I'm working on it for myself first because I fall into that camp of totally uncomfortable in front of the camera. So I've just kind of been playing around with TikTok a little bit.
Yeah, I've been creating videos for a while, and I've gotten used to being on camera. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm very good on camera, but I've gotten used to it. But it definitely does take some time to feel comfortable being in
Yeah.
front of the camera, and just knowing that people are going to be watching it. And it does feel definitely more self conscious, I think, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that interesting too with the focus on LinkedIn specifically. And I've seen the value in that too, both where I want to see our company focus that I work for at Kadina's Part Solutions, and then just where I've seen the most value too to B2B markets is really on LinkedIn. And
Mhm.
when we publish to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, there just really isn't the same level of value. If you're
Mhm.
a fashion influencer, then absolutely you should be on Instagram and be focusing there, and you're going to build community. But I think that's really the thing is on social media, you really see the value when you build community and you build actual real relationships with people. And I found that, especially in the marketing space, it's so much easier to do that on LinkedIn than anywhere else because you're able to see people's faces, you see their content, you're able to reach out directly to them, and it just feels more personal than some of the other channels when you're talking about
Mhm.
B2B marketing. So it was cool to see you guys kind of seeing the same thing. But you mentioned that part of your role is to help develop thought leaders and work through that. And I find that really interesting that you guys have a role, that you have a role on your team specifically at Sweetfish to do that. So, how do you work with your team to develop their thought leadership? And how do you get to the point where you're able to ghost write posts on behalf of 12 different people? That's pretty big feat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I do make a personal brand document for each of them, and I have a framework that again goes over their values, their interests, their content themes. So the content themes being probably the most important thing for me as I'm creating content for them, as well as for them as they're creating content for themselves. So for that, I like to ask them what's something you know about, because a lot of people don't feel like they're able to speak as experts on LinkedIn. When they really do have something to say, they just need to figure out what that is, right? And
Hmm.
you don't always have to speak as an expert. You can also speak as a student. You can also speak just as someone, like peel back the curtain on your role, because someone
Hmm.
who doesn't have your role doesn't know what it's like to be in your shoes and to do the work that you do, which we take for granted because we do it every day. So I like to ask them something they think they know a lot about, but I also like to ask them, what are you really curious about right now? And that's that idea of like building in public, I think is a really cool thing, to be able to just to be real on LinkedIn and to be like, here's something I'm learning and I don't have the answer yet. Um, so fleshing out those two things helps them get their content ideas. And it could be you start out broad with like maybe their interest is marketing or their expertise is marketing. Well, okay, that's really broad. So how do you
Right.
narrow that down? And what are your subtopics within that? And so we kind of bullet the subtopics, and then sometimes they're like, I actually am not interested in that. Throw that one out.
Hmm.
So it's a fun little journey, and like not only what are they interested in, but like what do they know a lot about. And so we get those things written down, and it's good also to have them written out. So I always use the document when I'm creating content for them. I'll pull that up so that I know
Okay.
who I'm talking as, because I do know these people personally. I've talked to them. I have 12, which is a lot to write for, but in the grand scheme of things, that's very small. Our company has around 40 full-time employees, which is pretty small, for a company wanting to do something like this.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I'll pull that document up when I write for them, and I think my limit probably is like 15 people. That's
Hmm.
probably the amount of people that I can keep in my brain, and or maybe that's a weird way to say that, the amount of voices or styles that I can copy.
Right.
And so for me, just talking to them alone is really helpful in being able to understand who they are and what their voice is. But I also I scour all the content that they have done in the past, whether they've been on a podcast, whether they're active on Twitter, or they've already been active on LinkedIn, whatever it may be. I do like a full audit of their past content, so I know kind of what verbiage they use,
Hmm.
what things they like to talk about, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, it takes time to actually get it down really well. It'll probably take me a little over a month to really, really nail it. So you can read a piece and say, oh, I don't think Emily wrote this. This looks a lot like Dan, which is the goal for me. That's like a
Absolutely.
win. Yeah. So that's the process of how we go through fleshing out those ideas, and then how I'm able to put those out into the world.
Yeah, I love that too because I've created a lot of content for LinkedIn, and it really does take a lot of time
Mhm.
and effort to think through what am I going to write about. And I mean, there's so much to what you just said. It's a little hard to even unpack it without having a 3 hour long conversation about it. But
Mhm.
uh, just the idea of having somebody on your team to write content like that on behalf of people you're trying to get jump started. I can really see the value in that because I have worked on trying to get different people jump started on LinkedIn, and it can be really challenging.
Yeah.
I think it's intimidating for people who haven't done that to think of creating it regularly. And
Mhm.
for me, I've kind of balanced between writing really thoughtful content and then coming up with something that doesn't take me very long, but still is on point and, kind of gets the ball rolling. And the funny thing is actually some of the posts I put the least amount of work into have actually done the best out of anything, which is a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, having somebody to be able to create content on your behalf like that is super valuable. And I think that for
Mhm.
people listening that want to get something jump started at their company, I think that's um, a great thing to consider is helping
Yeah.
people, maybe not to the degree that you're doing. Pretty, that's a pretty big program that you're running with 12 people. But even if it's
Yeah.
just working with individual people on your team for a month and really
Right.
helping create some of that content for them, because it also helps them to get clear about their own thoughts. And if somebody else
Mhm.
is taking an idea that they have, talking through it, and then being able to write it out clearly, just being able to kind of see your thought out clearly helps you to be
Yes.
able to articulate things better and become a better writer or a better communicator in
Mhm.
the future. So that's really helpful to have somebody on the team to do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because writing really is it's a muscle, right? You have to work it before you get really strong. And that's, I think, an important note to add is just that we require that they be posting for a month consistently before I jump on board and help them. And that's just to show you're committed to this, you
Hmm.
want to do this, but also to get you more comfortable in actually writing and posting consistently. And I think that's a small thing, but that's an actually really important thing to get people to build their confidence and to be able to practice more before they go all in, before they jump into the deep end.
Absolutely. No, that's a good caveat too, because if somebody's not going to post consistently for a month, they're probably not going to have the initiative to really keep driving
Mhm.
forward and keep rolling with it. Strategic Marketer is brought to you in part by Thrive Themes. Thrive Themes is a killer visual WordPress editor. They've also recently launched editable themes so that you can edit every element of your WordPress theme. You can create amazing landing pages that are beautiful and conversion focused. They've built all of their products around helping you convert more leads into customers. You can find out more about Thrive Themes by clicking the link in the show notes. So you talked about the personal brand document. So could you tell me just a little bit more about that? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but
Sure.
um, what does that look like, and how does that help you go straight for people?
Yeah. So in addition to the content themes, I like to pick, or to help our evangelists pick, 3 to 5 words that they would use to describe their voice. Um, so these could be like a characteristic of who they are or a way that they want to be seen, which I think is helpful especially for me, in saying oh, okay, this person doesn't want to be seen as witty or funny or too fun. Like they want to be professional. Or okay, this person doesn't want to be seen as too professional. They want to be seen as funny. So, because I've written content before, and we always go through an approval process. Like they only post what they want to post. And so I've written content before, and they send it back, and they're like, "I would never say this." So I'm like, "Okay, well, yeah, now I know. Now I know. Like, make a note of that, because it is a process, and it's a collaborative process too. Even though I am creating the content for them, it's always nice to get feedback from them to refine that even more. Um, and I also have people who are like, yeah, this is totally great. Like, I'm just going to use this, and that's fine too. So I outline, some adjectives to describe their personality. Um, I also like to get some like key stories, and it might be a story of how they got started in their career, or it might be a like personal mission statement that they have for their career. And this is something we talk about in onboarding, but it actually takes a little bit longer to write down in the document and really think through for them, especially. It's a big question. I mean, if I were to just ask you right now, like, what is your mission statement in life? If you didn't have one, it would take a long time to think of
Right.
one. So that's something that we continue to work on too, because I think part of a brand is stories as well. It's where you've come from, it's where you're going. So we include that, and then I do sometimes ask them some of their favorite like pop culture references, because
Hmm.
occasionally I'll have the capacity to create a meme for them, and it's always fun to like throw a meme up on LinkedIn. So
Absolutely.
right. So someone might be like, "Oh, well, I'm obsessed with Lord of the Rings," and then I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like I have an idea for this." So that's just a fun little extra that we do. But the other things are pretty core. It's the stories, the content themes, and their personality adjectives.
All right. So again, I would love to keep talking about this topic because I love LinkedIn and I spend too much time on LinkedIn working through this stuff. So this
Yeah.
is a topic I could talk about all day. But let's go ahead and talk about how to make this super practical for people. So, what is your advice for someone looking to launch a LinkedIn evangelist program or a similar program at their company?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing that's pretty key is lead by example. We were really fortunate to have Dan and James and Logan leading the way and already proving the results from LinkedIn, already posting consistently. And a lot of companies don't have that. And I think it's because, executives are busy. They're really busy. And so if they don't see the value in LinkedIn, they're probably not going to post on LinkedIn or invest much into that. So I think being able to prove the results, and if you want, take our results and use them to prove to your executives, like, it works. It worked for Sweetfish, and it will work differently for you, but we've seen results from it. So you have to get buy-in from the top, and then you also have to create some sort of bandwidth to actually create a lot of content for LinkedIn, as well as distribute content on LinkedIn. And so
Hmm.
for us, that looks like hiring me on to be a part of that, to curate and create content, as well as like getting our employees on board to distribute it. Um, but then that brings up a whole nother issue of you need employee buy-in too. So they have to see the value. And I think uh, I've been encouraged just by the amount of people who've wanted to be a part of it. And I think it's just because we do have such a good culture at the company where like we want to see the whole team succeed. But also the personal brand aspect is really exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's training as part of, it's like a benefit of the company. Like you get training on your personal brand and you also get all this content. So um
Yeah, it's
I
a
guess
huge benefit.
practical, yeah, so practical actionable advice would be to be able to prove results and get buy-in from your leaders, and then also to create some sort of capacity to be able to do that, and create a framework, create a process for creating content and distributing content, and then also being able to get employee buy-in through equipping them and encouraging them and training them.
Yeah, and usually my encouragement to people is to start as small as possible, unless you
Hmm.
have a lot of clout at your company and you can just turn
Yeah,
around and say, "Hey, let's implement this," and
yeah,
you have the already buy-in from executives and you have that. But if you aren't in that place where you have that kind of buy-in, it's probably best to start with posting yourself and getting some wins and building some of
yeah,
those relationships and seeing the value yourself, and then being able to take that and take that to leadership and say, "Hey, I've been seeing these results. I've been growing my personal brand, and here's how that helps the company."
yeah,
Is by, when I'm growing my personal brand, people are seeing my profile, they're seeing where I work, they're hearing about things that we do, and it's introduced conversations that have ended up leading to sales. Being able
Mhm.
to have those conversations will definitely go a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're an executive and you're listening to this, then um, starting with yourself, posting on LinkedIn and seeing the value yourself, I think it's probably a great place to start too. Um,
Yes.
so, what are some practical steps that people can take to grow their own reach on LinkedIn and grow
Mhm.
their own personal brand if they don't have an evangelist program and they don't have an Emily to be ghostwriting on their behalf? What
Sure.
steps can they take to start seeing value on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I think take some time to get clear on your brand, to really brainstorm who you are, what you want to talk about, what you feel like you're knowledgeable about, and what you feel like you're curious about. But then after that, I would say just post every day. Because, like I said before, it is something, it's like a muscle. You got to keep flexing it to grow it, to make it stronger. And so just get into a practice of writing and posting every day. It's also really good for the algorithm if you're posting consistently, if you're on the platform, because LinkedIn really loves it when you're on the platform. So the more that you post there and stay there, the more reach you'll get, which leads me to the next one, which is engage every day. And this is maybe even more important than posting every day, just to be able to like go to other people's posts and comment on them. And be intentional about that too. Like find the people in your niche, find the people who you want their attention or you want to learn from them, and then go and engage on their content every single day. Um, and then I would also add connect with people every day too. Um, so I try and connect to like around 5 people every day. I was in LinkedIn jail, and so I'm very careful about how many people I connect with now. But
That was a crazy story.
um, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But yeah, I would say keep connecting with people because it really is a community, and you learn a lot from people, and hopefully are able to contribute to that conversation and help someone else who's a step behind you. And that's what I like to remind our evangelists is, what did you need to know a couple of months ago or a year ago? Like, who's a step behind you? Because you feel like you have nothing to say. Well, that's not true. There's always going to be someone who wants to be where you are. So speak to that person, and yeah, and see what happens, and see how many relationships you can have, and how much your reach can grow.
Yeah, and something that's actually interesting about what you just said, by the way, that is excellent advice. And honestly, I that's probably going to end up being the clip for LinkedIn because that's super actionable, and I completely agree. Just start posting, post every day, and then engage with people. And this is something that um, I've really upped my game since talking with Dan about commenting.
Yeah.
Dan Sanchez from
Yeah.
Sweetfish is commenting and just going in and really adding value through your comments. And
Yeah.
that's a great way to build relationships and um, also to be seen as a thought leader if you're commenting on stuff and really adding to the conversation and not
Yes.
just saying great post or fire
Hmm.
emoji. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I still just say great post because I'm like, well, it was good, but I don't really have that much to
Yeah.
add to it. It's a great post.
Yeah.
But if more often than not you're really writing things that are thoughtful, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
Um, but something else that's cool about LinkedIn is that when you connect with somebody, by default, unless they've changed their settings, they follow you and you follow them, and
Yeah.
so you're automatically getting people that are following you if they connect with you, and
Yes.
they have
And
to
their networks
actively
too.
yeah, in their network. So then if they comment on something or they follow something that you post, then it's possible that people in their network are going to see that they commented. So I think that's part of the reason that you can really grow organically on LinkedIn is because of those kind of built-in things and I
Hmm.
mean you can turn that feature off where you don't automatically follow people, but if that's not off and it's on by default for most people, then they would have to actively try not to follow your content at that point. So definitely getting in and following people and connecting with people um, is important, both to build a relationship, but it also is a way for them to see your content. So,
Yes.
um, awesome. Yeah, that's a really helpful episode. And I'm really excited um, about people just jumping in on LinkedIn. I think there's so much value
Yeah.
there that's untapped by most people. So, thanks so much for sharing your expertise on that. So, what are some ways that people can learn about you? And then what are some ways that they can learn more about Sweetfish and what you guys are doing over there with podcasting?
Yeah. So for me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, And my name is Emily Brady. So it's DIBRITOBRADY. And then for the rest of us, I would say, I mean, because our evangelist program is about individuals over company pages, just go see who works at Sweetfish, and see who is talking about something you're interested in, and go connect with them, learn about what they're doing. We do have a page on LinkedIn for Sweetfish as well, if you want to look at that. And that's pretty much a place where we just post maybe jobs or updates. So if you're interested in that, if you want to come work with us, go follow that page. Otherwise, we have a lot of really great content on our website, on our blog, about anything and everything about marketing and sales and podcasting. So that's always a good resource as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll definitely link to your profile and some of those resources in the show notes.
Yep.
And again, thanks so much for coming on. Really excited for this episode to go out, because I want more people posting on LinkedIn, and I want to see more of these LinkedIn evangelist programs pop up. So thanks so much for sharing your insights, and look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Joseph.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to The Strategic Marketer wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you could do me a personal favor and hit 5 stars on the rating, you don't have to leave a full review, just hit 5 stars. It would really help me out. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Strategic Marketer.